Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We're live from Los Angeles once again, and we're going to talk about watches. I am specifically going to cover the semi-finalists for the Louis Vuitton watch prize and talk about um, why there's such a competition in the first place a little bit, try to demystify what goes behind the scenes a little bit, and then perhaps we'll have a more free-flowing conversation about the candidates, the so-called semifinalists, and then perhaps even answer some of your questions as well. In the meantime, feel free to send in your questions, anything that you would like to share. The chat, as you can see always, is wide open. And if you would like to join the conversation in a more active way, feel free to jump on the panel by clicking that pinned link, which is a StreamYard link, which means that you will be right next to me up here. Pardon me. As always, we start with a little bit of a warm-up, meaning that I will talk a little bit about what I've been posting in the last few days on Instagram, and then we'll dive right in. As you guys know, on Instagram, I usually choose either something from the archives or a contemporary photograph, and then I dive in as I want to do with contextual, historical, and horological details, which I love to share in that summarical format. Sometimes I find the constraints, the limitations of a format actually quite interesting and quite enabling. In this case, this is a new promotional photo that the rapper Freddie Gibbs, Gangsta Gibbs, or Big Rabbit, as he's also known, has done for a streetwear brand called Mitchell and Ness. But of course, it was the watch that caught my attention first and foremost. It's also kind of cool that he is posing right in front of a vintage Mercedes G wagon. I think it is a G320, but don't quote me on that. I'm really not an expert when it comes to cars. He's wearing a black tracksuit and the Nautilus flyback chronograph in 18 karat pink gold. This is in the genre that I would mostly classify as the Nautilus offshore in a way. I think the 5980 and 5990 are in a way much more butch and sportier in the perhaps more traditional sense than the Jumbo itself, and the less complicated versions of the Nautilus in general. Less of that chic, sleek, and elegant vibe, more of something that has the robustness and um, technical complications as a real sports watch. Now, of course, that's always an open question whether Patek actually makes sports watches, especially since they have been exposed more recently for having 30 meters of a depth rating more or less across the board, including their so-called sports lines. But that's a discussion that we can leave aside for now. You guys know, however, that I am actually quite fond of Patek's modern chronographs, especially this particular self-winding version. the CH28-250C in this particular case. Uh, Part of that is the aesthetics of it, right? They have a single crosshair style chronograph counter posted up right there at 6 o'clock, which gives the dial a much less cluttered look compared to any traditional chronographs. You have everything neatly arranged there with a full 60-minute counter encircling a 12-hour counter. And of course, since this is a flyback chronograph and a modern chronograph movement at that, with column wheel and vertical clutch, it means there's nothing wrong with just using the centrally deployed chronograph seconds hand as your chronograph, as your seconds hand period, just letting the chronograph run, using the reset button when you actually want to time something, right? You know, which of course will make the seconds hand as well as the counter hands at 6 o'clock fly back to 0. This is a step up, by the way, for Freddie Gibbs, especially considering how he for a long while had an iced out Cartier Santos. I think this is a much more tasteful choice. And you see that trend, by the way, developing among a lot of rappers, a lot of artists from the hip hop community, where they are much more conscious, much more aware, and much more intentional about their horological choices, purchases. I remember Lil Baby giving an interview very recently where he said he refuses to buy watches at this point from jewelers because he has been burned one too many times, and goes directly to the retailers themselves, to the brands themselves to make his purchases. And you see that shift quickly developing, right? You know, they have a lot of rappers, a lot of the popping artists, so to speak, have pieces that are catalog or off catalog pieces from some of the elite brands, rather than pieces that they may have bought that are bust down, so to speak, with aftermarket jam setting. So it's a trend that I appreciate as someone who loves both rap and watches. And of course, Freddie Gibbs just released his new collaboration album with the influential producer, The Alchemist. And it's called Alfredo 2, since their first collaboration had that portmanteau name as well, Alfredo, Al from Alan, and Fredo from Freddie Gibbs, obviously. Another one of my favorites, mostly because he's a fellow Spurs fan, Big Smoke, Skepta from Tottenham, North London. He also released a collaboration recently, a new track with the Nigerian artist Tiwa Savage. And in this promotional shot, he was wearing the old version of the 41 millimeter AP Royal Oak in stainless steel with the silver toned white dial. You guys know, in the 50th anniversary, so already a few years back, they have renewed the entire line, and not just the jumbos, with new movements, but also newer aesthetics as well, which you can mostly see on the dials, as well as the shapes of the bezels as well, which became, in a way, more prominent, slightly fattened even. I like both designs. I like something smaller, as you guys know, but it doesn't look off at all on Skepta's wrist here. That's the 15500 ST. There's our favorite. The governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who celebrated his birthday just a few days ago. I think it was, I wanted to say August 1st, but I double checked July 30th, actually. He's now, what, 78 years old? Wow. But this is back after after Terminator and right between Commando and Predator, where he famously wore this Seiko analog digital hybrid, which came to be called the Commando or the Predator, or even more so perhaps the Arnie, the Seiko Arnie. This is a portrait from 1986 where he's actually smoking a stogie, as he's a stud, as you guys know. And he's wearing the H558, posing in front of an American flag with a nice Western style belt, a distinctive buckle, classic red Ralph Lauren polo. Everything seems to be very carefully selected, even though he looks quite in his element and quite relaxed. And the watch itself has become such a legend, such an iconic piece of cinematic history, obviously, since it appeared in both of those movies and more, Commando and Predator. Seiko had to reissue it in a way in 2019 when they came up with the Prospex SNJ 025, which introduced a solar-powered modern interpretation of what was first released in 1982. And I believe he's wearing exactly one like this in that picture, which is reference H558 5000. John C. says he's no pré-gay man. He really isn't. He really isn't. He likes bigger butch pieces. And who can blame him? I mean, completely, I'm completely on board with people making conscious choices about the watches they wear, rather than what I might personally like or enjoy. It's always, I mean, it tells you something, right? When people like Sly or Arnie have made, by the sheer fact of making a choice and deciding to wear certain kinds of watches, entire brands popular, and in the way Arnold in many ways mainstreamed AP, Schwarzenegger in many, Stallone in many ways. Sly would kill me about this. Stallone in many ways mainstreamed Panerai, right? It matters. If there weren't such an alignment between the personalities and the charisma and presence of these guys and the brands, it wouldn't be so effective, right? I mean, someone like me with a skinny wrist could have never made Panerai popular, right? Not to compare myself with these greats. Next up, I love posting Spanish figures, especially political figures, with their watches, because the comment section has to reenact in a way the Spanish Civil War once again, once more. I discovered that first when I posted the famous picture of the Juan Carlos, the emeritus king, as they call him, with his royal oak, with the blackened out version, in full military garb when he was on an official visit to Switzerland. That was one of my favorite posts. So this is my version of clickbait. Unfortunately, people are not fighting as hard here. Just a few comments here and there when it comes to, what kind of promotion this constitutes for IWC, whether you should buy it or not, whether Jose Maria Aznar, who is a former prime minister of Spain, a conservative leader, a right-wing leader, makes IWC more desirable or less desirable, obviously with all sorts of political opinions flung from each side. I love it. I don't touch it. I don't make any comments one way or another, but I completely enjoy people getting bent out of shape because I happen to post a cool watch on someone with whom they might politically disagree. I mean, it would be very boring, and I would run out of material very quickly if I only posted watches on the wrists of people I actually like. Hey, Ozzy, lovely to see you, man. So this is Jose Maria Aznar, who is wearing the IWC Pilot's Watch chronograph Top Gun in black ceramic. This is the full 44 millimeter version, and it's really one piece, one part of that tradition that IWC seems to continue in experimenting with ceramic in particular, which extends all the way back in this genre to 1994, where they released Fliegerchronograph, the pilot's watch chronograph, reference 3705. Of course, nowadays, IWC's catalog includes a variety of pieces in different case diameters and with various complications, which now have an official tie-in with the United States Navy fighter pilot schools. And of course, these pieces now come in a panoply of Pantone coated color options in ceramic. So it's not only black ceramic, but really some very unusual shades, all of which almost have their names picked after different locations that these US Navy fighter pilot schools have. This is the hero of my favorite team, Spurs, Son Heung-min, who has played for a decade for the Tottenham Hotspur and has officially left the club. My only consolation is he is seemingly on his way to Los Angeles to sign with LAFC. Maybe that will be my motivation to go and see an actual MLS game, which I've never done in the US anyway. But this was from the day when he was officially unveiled for the first time as a Spurs player. So back in August 2015, and he was wearing a Rolex Daytona in 18 karat pink gold, of course, on the matching oyster bracelet. And the model is 116505-0008 for this particular dial. Since he has been officially the face of the Samsung Galaxy line, I think it's been 2-3 years now. He doesn't really wear any cool watches anymore. He just wears the Samsung Galaxy um, digital watches. But anyway, I think this was a cool piece, and he has worn a lot of interesting pieces over the years, just not really recently. By the way, if you want to follow my posts on Instagram, hi Ducky, or in fact, leave some likes and comments as I go along. Please feel free to follow that link. Um, I need less help, I guess, on Instagram than I do on YouTube. So feel free to leave your support or focus your support here with everything that YouTube provides you. But of course, you never know, right? For a long time, I was sitting right at 2,000 followers on Instagram as well, and suddenly the account exploded to almost 23,000 now. Who knows where it will go, and who knows where the winds might blow. So I would appreciate any kind of support in liking, commenting on my posts, sharing it with other people, because really the snapshots with everything served up to you in a single frame and uh, succinct narrative sometimes allows people to get a good glimpse of what I can do much faster than a YouTube live stream does. So I would appreciate that. Sir Ben Ainsley, British sailor and Olympic legend. We know him mostly in the watch world through that Yachtmaster 42 in titanium on a canvas strap. That was the prototype of today's RLX titanium Yachtmaster. Of course, it's much more. It's a very different watch compared to what made into serial production. His piece didn't have a date. His piece didn't have a matching bracelet, but it looked damn cool, and it was kind of the first glimpse of a watch that people have been waiting on, perhaps for a decade now. So it was very cool for it to make an appearance on an athlete of this caliber. And to be actually used in competition. However, he did recently a feature with GQ Hype, and it was actually officially sponsored by Rolex, that feature itself, which is a trend that I talked about, right? That these days, Rolex seems to be putting a lot of effort in familiarizing the public with their testimonies, which seems to be an interesting move, seems to be a little bit of an inverted relationship, but I think it's actually quite smart because it tells you more of the kinds of values and of the kinds of initiatives and success stories that Rolex can get behind, rather than simply plucking someone who's really hot, who's really charismatic, who simply has star power and putting a watch on their wrist. Now, Rolex does some of that as well. I don't want to sound like I'm a delusional fanboy, but they do a lot of other things, and I think these kinds of glimpses they allow into their world of testimonies, into the world of people they support, is really helpful. In this case, he's actually wearing a Daytona. He has said previously that his favorite watch is a Sky Dweller, so that he basically joins the list of 2 or 3 people that I know who actually like the Sky Dweller. But in this particular feature, the most interesting watch he was wearing was a Daytona in full white gold with a so-called silver panda dial. It's 116509-0072. You can look at it as a more luxurious and still relatively low-key version of the classic Panda. It has, of course, the matching tachymeter bezel in metal, in the matching metal. And since this is from the previous generation, it actually does not have a bezel ring that the tachymeter sits on, which is one of those little cosmetic details that separate the older 11X series from the 12X series. By the way, please hit the like button. It really helps a small channel as this. I'm trying to keep everything, I'm trying to run a tight ship, right? You know, keep everything a little more concise, keep the live streams to at around 1:30, you know, and 90 minutes or so. If it is possible, you know, if I don't have an ongoing conversation, if there are no extra requests from the audience. So anything you do in terms of leaving a comment after the live stream ends or hitting the like button really helps to put more eyeballs on this. This was from the last Grand Prix weekend before the summer break for Formula One at the Hungaroring, where the chairman of McLaren Racing, Sheikh Mohammed ibn Isa Al Khalifa, made an appearance. He is part of the Bahraini royal family and, of course, part of their sovereign fund as well, called Mumtalakat. He was wearing something a little bit different, right? Not just the usual Richard Mille or other kind of petrol heads friendly watches that you would see in the paddock. He's actually wearing a Breguet Marine Hora Mundi in 18 karat white gold on the blue rubber strap. The Marine line, I think, was renewed around 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Feel free to correct me in the chat. And this particular complication was integrated into that line in 2022. It had previously existed as the Classique reference 5717. Because it has a cities ring, sometimes this watch is mistakenly called a world timer, but the complication is a little different, but it is arguably more interesting than a classic world timer watch in the way that implements the dual time feature. The case has that hooded lug design that the Marine line adopted in its most recent instantiation, but has those luxurious Breguet details, which include, of course, the fully fluted or coin edge case band, the hand guilloche dial made out of a gold blank, which is also a very lovely maritime shade of blue in this case, with that unique wave motif, genuinely engine turned by hand. There's also a metallic silhouette of the continents, which are traced with a shade of maybe like a turquoise blue. And there is a sapphire disc that sits on it with the meridians. And that sapphire disc has a number of cutouts that help the implementation of this particular complication. The date window is at 12 o'clock, like a small arch. And the city's ring sits at 6 o'clock with the home local time indicated by that anchor that sits right above that larger arc. There's also a day-night indicator, which is right around 4 o'clock, with hand-hammered sun in pink gold and a moon in white gold. Now, basically, this watch has an interesting memory as part of its mechanism, as part of its complication, which is a series of cams, levers, and an integrated differential that allows you to jump back and forth with the help of that pusher at 8 o'clock between two cities, right? And it accordingly simultaneously jumps not only the hour hand, but also the day-night indicator and the date indicator as well, if necessary. It's quite cool as a complication, and I think it is protected by a series of patents. I've not seen it implemented by another brand. It is kind of a big boy version of the Marine as well, which is not necessarily a watch that has otherwise serious heft beyond its precious metal versions, of course. This particular piece is almost 44 millimeters in diameter and almost 14 millimeters in thickness, which perhaps is justified considering the unique complication. And of course, those dimensions may be a turnoff for some, including yours truly, but this is a very compelling proposition, very interesting package for a luxury sports watch. Genuinely a sports watch with 100-meter depth rating for the big boys among us, or those who simply like bigger watches. Real Madrid legend and the captain of the Croatian national football team, Luka Modric, was recently introduced to the media as a new AC Milan player. I don't know how to feel about that, having supported him at Madrid for so long. But AC Milan is a team that I at least have an affinity for, a fondness for among the Serie A teams. So I think I'm okay. And he was wearing a very beautiful version of the Patek Philippe annual calendar in 18-karat white gold with the two-tone blue dial. Some of you may know that when it was introduced in 1996, the annual calendar, as part of Philipp Stern's vision of developing useful complications, was a proprietary complication to Patek Philippe, and it originated basically as a diploma topic given to graduating students at the Geneva School of Engineering, according to specifications relayed to them by Patek's design department. And the idea was basically trying to find a simplified version of the perpetual calendar that would be just as useful as a complication, but perhaps could offer a more affordable alternative within the brand's catalog as an alternative path to collectors that wanted to move up from time-only pieces to something more complicated, but who were perhaps, for one reason or another, not yet ready for the perpetual calendars and perpetual calendar chronographs. So this 5205G-013 is the most recent generation of that project, which I believe was the 5035 when it was first introduced. It's quite cool. Of course, a lot of other brands have made annual calendars since. Even AP took a stab at it. Alan Gonzune still makes very interesting pieces with this particular complication, which gives you more or less everything that the perpetual calendar does, since it can account for the differences between months that have 30 days and 31 days, except for the short month of February. So you need that one correction at the end of February and beginning of March every year. The snowman. So we're looking at GZ, no longer very young, which gives me some inspiration to perhaps at some point upgrade my own moniker, since I'm no longer very young myself either. Atlanta rapper and trap music pioneer. I'm still very much on the Gucci camp, but as I mentioned before, I don't only feature people I deeply love on my feed. They only need to be unique and wear unique watches that befit their personality, and this is one of those cases. I've always found white dial sports watches very attractive, but I do remember the days where Nautiluses themselves were not so desirable. And the white dial version of the 5711 and what he's wearing here, 5726, were really deeply unpopular. Those days have long passed. And of course, when you have as your moniker the snowman, maybe it's quite befitting that you would choose a white dial watch, even when you're looking at a Nautilus. Here he's wearing another annual calendar, this time the Nautilus annual calendar in stainless steel with the white dial, so 5726 line 1A-010. We have talked a little bit about the story of the annual calendar. This complication joined the Nautilus lineup in 2010 and in 2012 with this white dial. Since it was discontinued in 2019, and since it was not really desirable through that relatively limited production period, this piece, I think, might represent an interesting value if you're looking for this complication, if you're a fan of Nautiluses, if you can still find them, of course, even on the secondary market. They carry an interesting premium still to this day. And the complication is still represented in the lineup in stainless steel with a more popular gradient blue dial, which is the 5726 line 1A-014. Here is Pedro Pascal, who has recently made the new cycle with his unique form of anxiety. So I tried to take a stab at it. This was a photo shared with me by a friend who goes by Caseback Chronicles on Instagram. So I thank him for that. It is a behind-the-scenes shot from the Materialists, where he features with Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson. And it is the pink gold version, 18 karat 5N pink gold version of the Jaeger LeCoultre Master Control chronograph calendar, which puts together a perennially popular pair of complications, a full calendar, triple date, triple calendar, it's also called, with, in this case, a self-winding chronograph and a moon phase indicator. Also a beautiful combination of colors, black, red, and gold, which gives the watch both a very stately look, but also kind of vintage inspiration in a way, especially in the black and red, but in the unique shades and executions of Jaeger-LeCoultre. I think the shade of the pink gold they have is just perfect. The black dials they make with their sunray finish have a very unique and captivating depth. You can see it in some of their reversals, like the reverser chronograph in the pink gold version also has a stunning black dial in combination with the same shade of gold. Here, I really love the way black and red play together on the dial, of course, along with the gold as well. And it has a pulsometer rather than a tachymeter or a telemeter. So kind of a doctor's watch vibe as well, perhaps, graduated for 30 pulsations. Pretty cool piece. Last but not least, Russell Crowe. This is something that I brought back from the archives, where when he had a sit down with GQ last summer, when he was still hungry, and then later also in London, when he was filming Nuremberg. The movie is coming out. It's slated for fall this year, and he's playing Hermann Göring in it. So it'll be interesting. The Nuremberg trials, of course, is a very important historical topic. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's tackled in film. But what this helped me discover is how he revived his collection after the infamous divorce auction that he had in 2018. And I was really happy to see already at this moment that he was going exclusively for heavy hitters at this point. That's also a topic that I want to explore, perhaps in a future live stream, even with an interesting interlocutor, remains to be announced. But how one builds or rebuilds a watch collection after such an event, right? You might have lost most of your collection or your entire collection in divorce proceedings. You may have lost it in a robbery or a similar event. Where do you go from there, right? If you still have the passion, if you still have the resources, what do you go for after that blank slate? And Russell Crowe was wearing two different Nautiluses for this particular sit down. He had a jumbo, the reference 5711 line 1A. And then he was also wearing a Nautilus moon phase in 18 karat gold, 18 karat pink gold specifically, with that gradient brown black dial, which of course in its instantiations 3712 and 5712 is one of my favorite Nautiluses of all time, with the asymmetric dial, with the power reserve indicator as well as the moon phase indicator, kind of balancing that notion of utilitarianism and romanticism between those two different types of indicators as well. Hey, take on my talk. How are you doing, man? 5711 and 5712 with Russell Crowe. And there you have it. So now we're ready to jump right into tonight's topic, which is the Louis Vuitton Watch Prize for Independent Creators. Um, I'll preface this with a few words on Louis Vuitton's recent focus on watches. I think it's a convergence of a number of different things, different events, different desires, you might say. Um, I know for a fact that the Arnault family, the powerhouse family uh, with the patriarch Bernard Arnault at the head of LVMH, long had projects, plans, aspirations to buy Patek Philippe, which of course was never for sale, but perhaps never less for sale than now, than after the post-pandemic boom. But perhaps there was an opportune moment where they approached, especially after having integrated Tiffany and Company into their conglomerate. They proceeded, um, as I've heard, to actually court the Stern family um, to make a move on Patek Philippe. I don't think Thierry Stern took that very well. I do appreciate, by the way, the fact that they want to keep it family owned still and independent, so to speak. Um, After all, even though it is not owned by the original families, Patek and Philippe, uh, the company has been held as a family company with the Stern family since the 30s. So almost a century of ownership by the same family. Um, and as far as I know, that special Tiffany dial 5711, which was a run of 170 pieces to commemorate um, the 170 years of collaboration between the two houses, between New York and Geneva, between Tiffany and Patek Philippe, was actually um, the Stern family's counter offer and a kind gesture, so to speak. Um, and I think at the very least, we also know that a pièce unique 5740, an ultra thin Nautilus perpetual calendar with a Tiffany dial, was part of that gesture, which made its um, appearance in a photo of Bernard Arnault and Frédéric Arnault playing chess. Now, after that failed attempt of acquiring Patek Philippe, Louis Vuitton didn't, of course, just sit on their hands. Um, Two of the younger brothers, as you might know, have been involved with watches, with the current CEO of Loro Piana, Frédéric Arnault, um, having been the CEO of Tag Heuer, um, and later also being responsible for watches under the LVMH umbrella before he took up this new position with Loro Piana. And Jean Arnault, with Louis Vuitton, has been the head of watches for them, for Louis Vuitton, for a while. And what they did initially was, of course, re-energize, renew Louis Vuitton's own line of watches, where they focused on more wearable, um, everyday and luxurious pieces, removed all the quartz watches from their lineup, and more recently reintroduced a streamlined integrated bracelet version of the tambour, as sort of their flagship. They didn't rest there either. They moved on and acquired, or rather transferred, the ownership of two pioneers of independent watchmaking from Bulgari, which LVMH has owned for a while, to Louis Vuitton directly, specifically to their high complications atelier and the heart of their watchmaking operation, which is La Fabrique du Temps. They brought in Daniel Roth and Gérard Janta brands from under Bulgari to Louis Vuitton at La Fabrique du Temps. Which, under the leadership of master watchmakers Michel Navas and Enrico Barbazzini, have started building or rebuilding these two brands around multiple models. The tourbillon, first and foremost, for the Daniel Roth, and later the ultra-thin time-only piece, both, of course, with the iconic double ellipse cases. And also the Gérard Janta brand too. Similarly, with a number of different designs, both more complicated and time-only elements as well. AP2 is family owned, and in fact, it's kind of, their structure is similar to Rolex in a way. Without going into detail, they're also run above, at least, by a foundation. I think their CEOs perhaps have a little more of a playroom, so to speak, a little bit more initiative to set their own agenda. But I think at the end of the day, they are very much still owned by the Audemars Piguet Foundation, which on its board has members of the family still. I think, in fact, from both families. That's, again, that's the thing with a lot of traditional watch companies, right? They have become brands with the single name, right? We know them as Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, but all of these brands were actually initially founded by two partners. So oftentimes it brings together those two last names. And in fact, if you're into vintage watches, when you go just a few decades back, well, it's quite a bit of decades actually by now, but if you go into the mid-century, even 60s, 70s, further, you would see a lot of these dials signed like Audemars, Piguet, Patek, Philippe, et compagnie, or Vacheron et Constantin. So even that has gone through a few different transformations to have become a proper name unto themselves, rather than being the merger of two different family names in the case of all these different brands. Now, we're coming back to Louis Vuitton. After their aspirations to acquire an elite brand like Patek Philippe failed, they basically focused on their own lineup and tried to find a way of, in fact, endowing Louis Vuitton brands within itself a horological powerhouse. And to be frank, they're not completely lacking, right? Precisely because, again, Louis Vuitton itself might not have much of a name as a watchmaker through the years, even though they have been making their own watches for more than 2 decades now. They have given Bulgari, at least, enough of support within the body of their conglomerates through LVMH, a very good run for more than a decade, to really stamp their own signature as a horological house. Of course, very much having its roots in that tradition of Roman jewelry, no doubt. They also had, of course, for most of those 20 plus years history, built around the high complications workshop. They bought and integrated into their system, La Fabrique du Temps, also built up that expertise from within. But they are, at this moment, trying to basically, through their ownership and also sport and sponsorship of independent watchmaking, a kind of social capital within the horological space to gain that respect, to gain that cachet as a watchmaker, as a watchmaking house. And again, it's not unrealistic, right? At the end of the day, Louis Vuitton started as a trunk maker, right? They weren't a full-blown fashion house at birth. So it's no different to them, at least through their corporate eyes, to add yet another field into their full, all-inclusive luxury experience. In a way, they're also similar to Chanel, that has been not only building their own capabilities as a watchmaker to the point of a vertically integrated manufacturer. Chanel has also strategically bought stakes in a number of independent watchmaking houses, ranging from F.B. Jean to Romain Gauthier to Dufour, to MBNF, so on and so forth. So in a way, that's also a strategy that has been successfully explored and that Louis Vuitton can model itself after. So coming back to the beginning of our story, the Louis Vuitton watch price for independent creators is their way of basically reaching into or reaching out to emergent independent makers to, in a way, sponsor them, right? To give them that extra push, to provide them with the kinds of resources only a luxury house like LVMH, Louis Vuitton specifically, can have. And they have done that previously with the Spanish watchmaker, Raúl Pages, who won last year's competition. And they have also, by the way, bought one of the biggest clock makers in today's landscape, which is the L'Épée. L'Épée 1839, that's owned by Louis Vuitton too now. So that's the grand prize of the Louis Vuitton watch prize, to come under the wing of Louis Vuitton, to get a sort of residency at La Fabrique du Temps. I think that was part of the deal, part of the prize given to Raúl Pages. He was to receive a grant and a one-year mentorship from the experts Michel Navas, Enrico Barbazini, and other makers, engineers, and artisans at La Fabrique du Temps. Of course, again, when you talk about La Fabrique du Temps, they have over the years made so many complicated pieces, watches, both for Louis Vuitton and other brands. So you can imagine how that 1 year mentorship / residence with La Fabrique du Temps can add to the creative palette of an independent watchmaker. So this year's semi-finalists, which are apparently chosen from around 1,000, maybe more submissions. There are 20 of them. I think they're gonna filter it down to 10. By the way, again, I will ask you to hit the like button if you haven't. Please do subscribe if you haven't for whatever reason. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. I'm trying to be live more consistently, at least 4 times a week. Hopefully, we will return back to daily and even more live streams and have more videos. And with your support, everything is possible, really. So please feel free. YouTube provides you a number of ways for support, of course. And if you don't want to do it through YouTube, in the video description, I have a couple more options for you. Let's go through the 20 semi-finalists first quickly and in some detail. Again, if you want me to turn your attention to any one of these pieces, feel free to send in a super chat and I will change tracks and go into that particular watch. But let me just very quickly go through each one of them. The first piece is by Anton Sukhanov, Russian watchmaker, St. Petersburg Easter egg tourbillon clock. Offray Paris, that's Theo Offray, which was in my thumbnail, actually, the Giverny Blue Train. The Kung Fu by Behrens, a Chinese watchmaker. Beauties of Nature by Daiso Makihara from Japan. DC6 Titanium by David Kando. L'Essentiel by Fabien Payet. Möbius by Femme Alhout. The School Watch by Hazeman Monin. The Resurgence by our very own Josh Shapiro. Central Seconds Hong Kong edition by Kalinic Clays. The Kudoke 5 by Stefan Kudoke. CIC 39mm Racing Green by Bernhard Lederer. Sokoku by Masa and Company, Japanese watchmaker. Ventralis by M. Graver. The RD 002 by Minarochi. The Seconde Morte by Peter Mambeda. Fading Hours by Quiet Club. Series 2 by Ruben Schutz. Face of Tasaki, Black Mother of Pearl by Tasaki, and the Tremblage dial by Wiener. Let's start with that simply. Wiener is a Swiss brand based in Lorient. Their watches have been sold for some years now by a collected man, so that's where you may have come into touch, or in where you may have come to view them. They're usually time-only pieces with these handmade tremblage dials. Again, we were just talking about hand hammering at a different level and a very different price range with Atelier Wen's new watch, Ancestra. This is the tremblage work. I think Wiener has been doing this kind of work since 2020. A form of textured engraving where a small burin is lightly hammered with a regular succession of quick light taps as if trembling over the surface of the dial. So each piece, in a way, has the level of handwork which is one of a kind, right? No tremblage dial is the same as the next, because the placement is seemingly arbitrary and the small randomly placed indentations and micro incisions give a lot of depth, a lot of unique depth to each and every dial, with the entire surface equally and regularly treated by the master person, master engraver, you might say. And of course, you know, no matter how arbitrary or seemingly arbitrary the placement is, this requires a sort of consistency and care, right? Because if the burin is moved too quickly or too slowly, for that matter, during the hammering process, obviously it will produce something terribly uneven, and something that probably needs to be binned, and the work to start from scratch. There's actually, I think, an interesting video of the process from their own website, if I may. As you see, if the appearance is random, the work that goes into it is far from it. It's very precise, very minute, and very patient kind of work that really is worthy of the name handwork. The case diameter is right at 40 millimeters. The thickness is a comfortable 1035. 100-meter depth rating, which is fantastic for this kind of classic, relatively conservative dress watch. And the design of the dial itself is inspired by the marine chronometers, which the brand's namesake used to specialize in. Here's a look at the movement. The watchmaker behind it is Bernhard Zwins, who I believe worked for, or with rather, Philippe Dufour for some years before he set off on his own path. I think he still does work for other brands, but Vinaire is where he presents his own work, which again, it's a new movement that he designed, and I think the parts of the movement were made mostly by Andreas Strehler. So one of the 20 semi-finalists, the Tremblage dial watch by Vinaire. Going to something relatively different. Behrens is a Chinese watchmaker that's not an independent watchmaker in the way we understand it. It's more of an emergent horological house that tries to present unique complications with unusual design and presentation, leveraging, of course, the strength of Chinese watchmaking, which is production scale. But the kung fu is their haute horlogerie watch in a way. And it has this interesting power reserve indicator right here at around 9 o'clock of the off-center main dial, which is delightfully over-engineered. As you wind the watch, the arrow rises while that hand progressively ticks upwards across the staggered height stakes across the two axes. I think there's they have some sort of demonstration of this on their own website. So let's see if we can take a look at it. There we go. So platinum pieces, 9 pieces in the actual run. And the design of the dial was apparently inspired by a half-liang coin of the Qin dynasty in China. The hands inspired by crossbows of the Qin dynasty as well. So a few design details that take inspiration from the home of the brand, parts of the movement which are openly laid out on the base plate, which is also the dial of the watch, are mirror polished by hand. The piece has an originally designed balance with its proprietary regulating pins and polarization separation. And there's a hanging balance cock, which also is part of the visual signature of the watch. There it is. So kind of like a futuristic take, of course, with many original aspects. I correlate to the Breguet tradition, in a way you can say, a more futuristic version that's refracted through Chinese cultural origins. Hey, Ryan Offrey, how are you doing, man? Please hit the like button as you join the live. Jilden, is Mobius Chinese maker? I'm actually, this is the first time I see a watch of them. I want to say yes, though I'm not sure. Yeah, yes, they're Chinese. I double checked just now. Yeah, you're right. But yes, this is Beran's Kung Fu, based out of Shenzhen, China. Bing Changlin and Guobio Chan are the two makers behind this brand. That has a very German sounding name, but that is actually based in China. They are one of the semi-finalists in this year's Louis Vuitton watch prize with their Kung Fu. Since you have mentioned them, Gildan, let's look at Femme Al Hood's Möbius. That's why I had a hard time, telling what their origin was. Femme Al Hood to me sounds like I don't know, like a character from Dune, than the name of a Chinese watchmaker. But I believe Möbius is the model, and Femme Al Hood, the name of the brand, and Xinjiang Dai, the watchmaker behind it. Again, the aesthetic is not similar to Behrens. That's not what I want to say, but it's in that realm of retrofuturistic design that is a little bit different from your usual watch, which I find very refreshing, by the way, because admittedly, a lot of elite luxury watch brands from Switzerland, from Germany, pardon me, even from Japan, with Seiko and Citizen, the major ones, Orient, their watch design is very conservative, right? It's rare where they would have a one-off model that is arguably much less popular than everything else they produce, make, and sell, where they would take a few different challenges. Whereas you see with a lot of these new Chinese and Japanese brands, we were just looking at Behrens, now we are looking at Femme Al Hood. We have previously looked at Otsuka Lotek. You have a lot of these interesting newer design ideas that are more industrially inflected, that are a little bit outside of the box compared to, again, how conservative watch design usually can be. This is a bi-axis tourbillon, a very interesting looking piece, kind of elongated elliptical design where you have a vertical layout for the tourbillon, which is in the upper half of the open work dial, and the two retrograde hands for the hour and minutes. I want to see if we can get a better view of the watch on their own website, and sure we can. You see the bi-axis tourbillon up there, and the two hands down here, 1 to 12 for the hour, 0 to 60 for the minutes, in terms of two circles or two crescent-shaped circles that face each other. The case, by the way, is shaped very interestingly as well, with a concave polishing on the case band, zirconium, tantalum, and stainless steel. It's a very beautiful and unusual design. I kind of love it. Bi-axis tourbillon, 90 seconds and 60 seconds. double retrograde complication for the jump hour and minutes. And a unique movement with high horology finishing, hand wound, 50 hours at full crank. And it's a reference to the Möbius strip, right? You know, that symbolizes infinity, or represents rather infinity in terms of an unending cycle. I wonder how this is priced, actually. $32,000. Very interesting. Honestly, it's if you actually like the design, that seems like a very interesting deal for a piece that's as uniquely complicated and singularly designed as this. Hey, Keslovitz. Yeah, you should come over. You don't need to even click the link. You can join from right here. Chips, do I listen to Faith Hill? I don't, actually. I don't listen to a lot of country music at all, so no judgment intended. What was it that that quote from the famous comedian Bob Newhart? Oh yeah, I love this. I don't like country music, but I don't mean to denigrate those who do. And for the people who like country music, denigrate means put down. that No offense. So this was the Famelhut Möbius, which is one of the 20 semi-finalists of the Louis Vuitton watch prize for independent creators. By the way, again, we were looking at the Wiener Tremblage dial. That's a watch that costs, I think, about 90,000 Swiss francs. Correct me if I'm wrong. We looked at the Famelhut Möbius, which costs $32,000, which certainly is not loose change, but still a very interesting proposition, considering the originality of the watch, the quality of finishing, as much as you can make out, of course, from their own website. And the Kung Fu Barons, which I think is under 30,000 as well. Let me see. 28,500. just to have those price points in mind as well. There's our very own Josh Shapiro, based in Southern California. The manufacturer is in Torrance. He is himself a master guillocheur, a master engine turner with his own infinity pattern. But over the last few years, he has assembled a whole team of young watchmakers and machiners who practice their arts not too far from here in Torrance, as part of his project of reviving American watchmaking. And that's where the name Resurgence comes from for his new time-only piece. And those pieces are priced at 70,000 for stainless steel and zirconium, 80,000 for tantalum, and 85,000 for white and pink gold. In addition to that beautiful and unique hand guilloche dial, and the case band, again, fully engine turned too. It has a movement with custom bridge plate settings that you can choose. As you can see, there are 3 options you can have. Each have the same movement, but different configuration, different architecture for the bridge plates. Separate the engine turned sectors with multiple patterns, with the proprietary infinity basket weave, barley corn on the outside, and the moire pattern for the subdial seconds. Of course, the hands too are hand finished. The movements, the numerals, black polished by hand as well. And here is the case, 38 millimeters, 8.7 excluding the crystal in thickness, with the detachable lugs screwing in from the inside so as not to disrupt the guilloche. Pardon me. It's laid right there next to a ring, by the way, which at least at some point Josh was making. I don't know if he still works on those, but I'm sure he would be more than happy to make you a ring that goes with your commission as well, of course, with an additional fee. There's how it looks from the profile, the pink gold case specifically. Barley corn pattern on the case band. with damascening on the bridge plates. Anglage, the chamfering on the plates. And the wheels are actually rendered in 14 karat pink gold with rounded and polished spokes, as you can see here. And here are a couple of different options. Pink gold, the silvered white dial, dark gray zirconium dial, which is the one that we saw just now in the competition. White gold with blue dial, blued numerals over the frosted silver, zirconium with purple accents, the 3 movement options, and those are the prices: a third upon ordering and the remaining 2/3 on delivery. So that is one of the semi-finalists, Josh Shapiro with the Jan Shapiro Resurgence, one of the 20 semi-finalists of the Louis Vuitton watch prize. Sorry, I seem to be stuck here a little bit. Okay. Let's start from scratch. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, maybe again, in the interest of keeping things succinct and to the point, maybe I will talk about one more watch and we'll have the second part of this coverage tomorrow. If you have any last minute requests, any watch related questions, feel free to send them in with a super chat. As you guys know, this channel is completely independent, with no sponsors, no capital behind it, nothing else. Just you as the only masters, as the only supporters of this channel. So anything you might like to contribute, with super chats, with getting a membership, which gives you access to exclusive content. Even when you're leaving a comment after the live stream concludes, you can leave a super thanks if you appreciate the effort. If you learned anything, if you enjoyed any part of this, it would be much appreciated. I'm an independent creator myself and in dire need of course, some extra funds to be able to continue this sort of coverage that is purely focused on watches. So if you appreciate that, I would appreciate you putting your money where your mouth is. Theo Offray was one of the independent watchmakers actually who is based out of Morteau originally, or originated in Morteau. One of the graduates of the famed Lycée Edgar Faure, that watchmaking school in Morteau, French town near the Swiss border. And I think he first came into the public spotlight when he won the F. Jean Young Talent competition quite a few years back already. I mean, Théophile is still quite young, I think around 28 years old maybe. And he won this competition in 2018, I want to say. So when he was barely 21-year-old, probably. So very, very interesting. And he has been known so far mostly for making tourbillons. A lot of what you see when you go into his website, Offre Paris, are tourbillon wristwatches. More recently, collaborated with Peter Mambeda on a time-only watch, which went on auction with the 10th edition of Only Watch. It was this piece, and now he is presenting his own time-only piece in the Offre Giverny Blue Train. Which is actually 36 millimeter, three-hander, limited to just 10 pieces per year. Made in Paris, as it happens. The retail price is around 70,000 euros. Very low production, of course, hand finished. And it's named Blue Train because it's... Hey, hi Basil, nice to see you, man. Thanks for stopping by. It has a silver dial engraved with blue set indices, where it takes its name from. And the minute track on the periphery of the dial also has a blue hue, which is continued in the blued, hands for hours, minutes, and seconds as well. "11 millimeters of thickness," which, you know, is perhaps a little disproportionate for a 36 millimeter watch, but of course it's not fair, perhaps, because at the end of the day, I think the Rolex Datejust is also around that thickness, maybe even thicker, with the same diameter at 36 millimeters. So best to make your way to Paris and try it on. Beautiful lugs as well. And the new proprietary movement with that 3/4 plate in their house charbonnage finish. That 3/4 bridge is rendered in German silver. A beautiful outsized 13 millimeter balance wheel, beating at 18,000 semi-oscillations per hour. It's 2.5 hertz, which of course gives that balance spring a very organic look when you focus on it. 40 hours of power reserve at full crank. Beautiful piece. And the price point is around 70,000 euros. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate that you are here. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And feel free to share the link with fellow enthusiasts and other watch collectors. You can also follow me on Instagram and use the Instagram link as well to introduce your friends into the platform. I think that's a good snapshot of everything I do. Hit the like before you leave. Please always leave a comment once the broadcast ends. Those are actually very valuable. It's a good way to reach me also, to ask questions, make suggestions, add to the show with your comments as well. And you can always reach me almost 24/7 on Instagram too via DMs. So feel free to do that. If you want to support the channel, there are a few different ways that I link in the video description. And of course, anything you can do through YouTube with super chat, super thanks, and buying or gifting memberships is always very helpful. So keep me in mind somehow for that as well. I really appreciate all of you. I'll see you with the second part of this coverage tomorrow night around the same time, hopefully a little earlier. Until then, please stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.